Welcome to DSEJ Tele Classes, a digital initiative by Directorate of School Education, Jammu. Dear students, I am Mohinder Goswami. Today I am going to discuss with you class 10th chapter number 2, that is an excellent father. Let's start the topic. At the end of the story, you will be able to know about the author of the story. You will be able to learn the new words in the story, explain the theme of the story. Along with this, you will also able to know about Mr. Bennett and Mrs. Bennett. You will be able to apply the new learning in your real life, use the different structures, and also you will able to develop your skills, that is LS or W. With this, let us continue the topic. An Excellent Father, a beautiful story written by Jane Austen. She was born on 16th December 1775. Her place of birth is Steventon in Hampshire. Dear students, her major works include Pride and Prejudice. The present story which gonna discuss is also taken from this beautiful novel Pride and Prejudice. Another story is which is written by her is a novel Emma Sense and Sensibility. Man's one more, that is Mansfield Park, was also written by her. And along with this, a Northanger Abbey. Dear student, she died on 18th July 1817. Now students, introduction to the story. An Excellent Father is an extract from Jane Austen's famous novel Pride and Prejudice. The main theme of the play is marriage. The novel shows how women marry men they are not in love with, simply in order to find a financial security. As we have already discussed, this beautiful story is taken from the novel Pride and Prejudice. Its main theme is concerned with the marriage and financial security. The main characters of the story. As far as the characters of the story are concerned, there is main character Mr. Bennett and his wife Mrs. Bennett, and they have three daughters, that is Elizabeth, Kitty and Lizzie. Along with this, we will be able to discuss in this story about Mr. Bingley and Mrs. Long. Now students, let us discuss these characters one by one in the story and find out their role, what they play in the story. Now students, let us discuss the new words from the story. These are some of the very important words that we contain in the story. The first one is tiresome, which means irritating or boring. Another word is amusement, which means something which causes to laugh or smile. Another word is acquaintance, which means familiarity. So all these words we will see in the story, and you have to find out at that time the exact meaning. Now the word fourth, which means the word fourth is surpass, which means greater or better than. Another word which we will see in the story is persuade, which means to motivate. Okay, fine. Now the word number 6, astonishment, which students it means complete, or you can say surprise or wonder. Let us students now listen to the conversation between Mr. and Mrs. Bennett.
My dear Mr. Bennett, have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last?
No, I have not heard this.
But it is. Mrs. Long, she has just been here and she told me about it. Do you want to know who had taken it?
You want to tell me, and I have no objection to it.
Why, my dear, you must know. Mrs. Long said that Netherfield Park is taken by a young man of large fortune from the north of England. He came on Monday to the place and was so much delighted with it, and he agreed to take it.
What is his name?
Mr. Bingley.
Is he married or single?
Oh, single? My dear, to be sure. A single man of large fortune, 4 or 5 thousand per year? What a fine thing for our girls.
How?
My dear Mr. Bennett, how can you be so tiresome? You know, I am thinking of marrying one of them.
Is that his design in setting here?
Design? Nonsense. How can you talk so? But it is very likely that he may fall in love with one of them. Therefore, you must visit him as soon as possible.
I see no occasion for that. You and the girls may go, or you may send them by themselves, which perhaps will be still better. As you are also beautiful as any of them, Mr. Bingley might like you the best of the party.
My dear, you flatter me. I certainly have had my share of beauty. But my dear, you must indeed go and see Mr. Bingley when comes into the neighborhood. I dare say Mr. Bingley will be very glad to see you.
I will send a few lines by you to assure him of my hearty consent to marry whichever he chooses of the girls.
You take delight in vexing me. You have no compassion on my poor nerves.
You mistake me, my dear. I have high respect for your nerves.
Ah, you don't know what I suffer.
But I hope you will get over it and live to see many young men of 4,000 a year income into the neighborhood.
It will be of no use to us if 20 such should come, since you will not visit them.
Lizzie, I hope Mr. Bingley will like it.
We are not to know what Mr. Bingley likes.
But you forget, Mamma. We shall meet him at the assemblies that Mrs. Long has promised to introduce him.
I don't believe Mrs. Long will do any such thing. She has two nieces of her own. She is a selfish woman. Don't keep coughing so, Kitty. For heaven's sake, have little compassion on my nerves.
Kitty has no discretion in her cough.
I don't cough for my own amusement.
Let's return to Mr. Bingley.
I am sick of Mr. Bingley.
I am sorry to hear that. Why didn't you tell me so before? If I had known as much this morning, I certainly would not have called on him. But I have actually paid the visit. We cannot escape the acquaintance now.
How good it was of you, my dear Mr. Bennett. But I knew I should persuade you at last. I was sure you loved your girls too well to neglect such an acquaintance. Well, how pleased I am, and it is such a good joke too, that you should have gone this morning and never said a word about it till now. Now, Kitty, you can cough as much as you choose. What an excellent father you have, girls.
Dear students, now let us discuss the summary of the story. This prose extract has been taken from Jane Austen's famous novel Pride and Prejudice, which after considerable revision appeared as Pride and Prejudice in 1813. Dear student, as far as this present part of story is concerned, which we have just listened in the form of dialogues between Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, has been taken from Jane Austen's famous novel Pride and Prejudice. as you know, this was the famous novel of Jane Austen's, and this novel appeared in 1813, which was his date of publication. This novel tells us the story of the gradual union of two people, one held back by unconquerable pride and the other blinded by prejudice. Thus, the name Pride and Prejudice. In this story, Mr. Bennett seems to be a careless father who is not bothered about the marriage of his daughters who have attained marriageable age. The chapter starts when Mr. Bingley takes Netherfield Park. Dear student, as the story opens, we find that Mr. Bingley seems to be a very careless father who is not worrying about the marriages of his daughters who have attained the marriageable age. And this chapter starts when Mr. Bingley takes Netherfield Park. Netherfield Park is in the neighborhood of Mr. Bennett's house. Mrs. Bennet becomes very happy about her daughters because she does not want to lose this opportunity of marrying one of her daughters to Mr. Bingley. Dear students, as you know, this beautiful house, Nether Park, is in the neighborhood of Mr. Bennet house. As Mr. Bingley came to live there, Mrs. Bennet becomes very happy about her daughters. She thought that this is an golden opportunity to marry one of her daughters to Mr. Bingley because Mr. Bingley was a very rich person whose income, was a 4 or 5 thousand. On hearing about the arrival of Mr. Bingley, she tells her husband to develop some familiarity with him, but he reacts very lightly to this news. Dear students, when she hears that Mr. Bingley is coming to live in the neighborhood, she becomes very, very excited and become very happy because she knew that Mr. Bingley was a very rich person, and so she tells her husband to develop some familiarity with him. But her husband took it very lightly. He reacts it in a very lightly to this news, and she thinks that he's not interested. Now, students, he starts teasing his wife and comments that she should send the girls to meet Mr. Bingley, but should not go herself, for she is very beautiful even her old age. Dear students, know what happens. Instead of taking interest in getting familiarity with the Mr. Bingley, he starts teasing his wife, and even he comments that she should send the girls to meet Mr. Bingley, but should not go herself as she was also very beautiful in her old age. May Mr. Bingley like her the best of the party, and at that time he was not taking interest. Instead, he was teasing his wife by commenting such kind of remarks on her. Dear students, now finally Mrs. Bennet gets very disappointed because of her husband's loose reaction. As a result, in a fit of anger, she scolds her daughter Kitty for coughing. When such kind of conversation is taking place between both these husband and wife, finally Mrs. Bennet gets very disappointed because of her husband loose reaction, because her husband is not taking interest in and developing any kind of familiarity with Mr. Bingley. So as a result, in a fit of anger, she scolds her daughter Kitty for coughing. The cough was natural, but she was angry at that moment. Now, ultimately, when she comes to know that her husband, Mr. Bennet, had visited Mr. Bingley, she feels relaxed and overwhelmed. In the end, she becomes very, very happy that her husband had already visited Mr. Bingley, and she knew that he loved his daughters very much, and that's why he had already visited, but without informing her that she had already developed, familiarity with Mr. Bingley about this. In the end, she tells her daughters, "You have an excellent father, girls," because she comes to know that Mr. Bennet had actually paid the visit to Mr. Bingley, stealthily, without telling any one of them. Now, students, in the end, she tells her daughters that girls, you have an excellent father because because their father had already visited Mr. Bingley, what without informing any one of them. He knew that this familiarity can be converted into a good, proposal for marriage, and that's why he had already visited but without informing anyone of. Now, students, let us discuss the character of Mr. Bennet. As far as Mr. Bennet character is concerned, he was the main character of the story, an excellent father. He was the father of three girls. He was a middle-aged person. His character sketch can be discussed under the following points. Now let us discuss his character in a point-wise manner. The first point which we will discuss, that is a middle-aged person, jolly person, caring father, an excellent father, main characters, and then we will conclude it. Now students, let us discuss the first point, middle-aged person. Dear students, Mr. Bennett was a middle-aged person. He had three daughters of marriageable age. He had a very loving wife. Her name was Mrs. Bennett. He, along with his family, lived near the Netherfield Park. Now, the second point, that is jolly person. He was a very jolly person. He was full of wit and humor. He took delighted in vexing his wife and daughters. He teased his wife, pretending not to be interested in Mr. Bingley. Since he was very, very a humorous kind of personality, he loved his life and even the others. To add one more situation of wit and humor, he even asked his wife to visit Mr. Bingley along with his daughters. He teased his wife by saying Mr. Bingley might like you the best of the party. A caring father. He was a very caring father. He loved his daughters, but he did not show this till the end. Like Mrs. Bennet, he was too worried about the marriage of his daughters. But he didn't believe in show off. Actually, the love of Mr. Bennet is a different from the love of Mrs. Bennet. He did not believe in show off. An excellent father. Mr. Bennet was no doubt an excellent father. He loved his daughters and was very serious about their marriage. He pretended to be disinterested in Mr. Bingley, yet he was the first to visit him. You know, he was such kind of personality who didn't show anything but did all the work. He kept the ladies ignorant about the visit till the last moment. When the fact was out, everyone enjoyed the joke. No, at last Mrs. Bennet said, "What an excellent father you have, girls." Now, students, let us discuss the point fifth, main characters. He was the main character of the story. You know, all the incidents and events directly or indirectly linked with him. As the story opens, we find Mr. Bennet, and all the characters in the story directly or indirectly linked with this main character. Now, students, let us conclude this beautiful character with the words. In the end, we can say that he was the heart and soul of the story. The story, An Excellent Father, could not be run even for a second without him. Moreover, he was a very loving and caring father. Now, students, let us discuss the character of Mrs. Bennet. Mrs. Bennet was the wife of Mr. Bennet. She lived along with her three daughters and a husband near Netherfield Park. She remained always worried about the marriage of her daughters. Her character sketch can be discussed under the following points. Dear students, as far as Mrs. Bennet character is concerned, she was, the wife of Mr. Bennet. She had three daughters of marriageable age. She was very loving and caring mother. Now let us discuss her character in a point-wise manner. The first point which we will discuss, that is middle-aged woman, mother of three daughters, loving and caring mother, simple-hearted woman, main characters, and the conclusion. Now students, let us discuss The first point, that is middle-aged woman. Dear students, like Mr. Bennett, she was also a middle-aged woman. She has three daughters of marriageable age. She always remained worried about them. And like all mothers, she always thinks about the daughters and their marriage by getting a suitable match for them. Now, students, let us discuss the second main point of the character, that is mother of three daughters. She was the mother of three marriageable daughters. She did not lose any chance of finding a suitable match for them. She remained always worried and always in search of a golden opportunity for getting a suitable matches for them. Now, the point number three, loving and caring mother. She was a very loving and caring mother. As she came to know that Mr. Bingley was a bachelor, she asked her husband to pay a visit to Mr. Bingley and make an acquaintance with him. Dear students, she was very loving and caring mother. She did not want to lose any opportunity. When she came to know that Mr. Bingley was a bachelor, so she at once asked her husband to pay visit to Mr. Bingley. Now, students, she hoped that Mr. Bingley might fall in love with one of her daughters and get married. This was the thing. That's why she asked her husband to go and develop familiarity with Mr. Bingley so that her daughters may get engaged to. Now, students, let us discuss the point number four, that is simple-hearted women. She was a simple-hearted woman. She could not see through the trickery remarks of her husband. She felt too much irritated with with Mr. Bennett. She even stopped talking to him. She was very simple-hearted woman who could not able to see the trickery remarks of her husband, and that's why she stopped talking to him. Now, students, let us discuss the point number five, that is main character. She was the second main character of the story. All the incidents and events directly or indirectly linked with her. The whole story revolved around her. In short, you can say that she was the heart and soul of the story. Students, let us conclude this beautiful character of Mrs. Bennet with the words. In the end, we can say that she was very caring and loving mother who was the heart and soul of the story. And the story could not be possible for a second without her. You can say that she was the life of the story. Okay, fine. Now, student, let us discuss the important language work in the story. And today's main important focus point is the grammatical part conquered. As you know, the word conquered means a harmonious relationship between two grammatical items. And this conquered is also known as subject verb agreement. As we have also discussed in earlier classes that subject and verb agreement should be, is the part and parcel of the English language. And if we can clear this concept by taking an example, the list of things is quite long. Here you can see the list is a subject and is as a verb, and if you see this thing minutely, that the word list here is a subject but it is a singular, and if the subject is singular, automatically the verb which agree with this subject should be the single one. And in the second example, if you see the case of second example, you will also find the similarity in that the list of things are quite long. Here you see the subject are, the subject is a plural word, and if the subject is a plural word, it will agree with the automatically it agree with plural verb. Okay, if the subject is is in plural form, and it will agree with the verb which is also in plural form. So it is quite clear that if the subject is singular, the verb should be singular. If the subject is plural, the verb should be plural. That's why the definition here clearly signifies that there should be a harmonious relationship between two grammatical items. Now, students, you just note down this important point in your notebook, that singular subject takes singular verb and plural subject takes plural verb. As we have discussed earlier in the example, the list of things. So here the list is singular subject and is singular verb. In the similar case, when we talk about the second example, that is the lists. What I am saying, the lists of things are quite long. Here the list words are plural subject and are is a plural verb. So you should have to remember this thing forever. Dear students, now we have completed this beautiful story, An Excellent Father. We have discussed about the theme of the story. We have listened to the conversation between Mr. Bennett and Mrs. Bennett, and along with this we have discussed the detailed summary along with characters. Now it's time to think about the test. Let us think about the test and find out some of the answer that we have already discussed in the story. Now students, it's time to answer some of the important questions which we have already discussed and provided in the story, and you just give answer along with me. Now students, let us discuss the question number 1. As far as question number 1 is concerned, it is, who is the writer of the story An Excellent Father? So dear students, we have already discussed in this story that this beautiful story, or you can say prose extract, is taken from a famous novel, that is Pride and Prejudice. And this famous novel was written by Jane Austen, and in the similar manner we can say this beautiful story An Excellent Father is also written by Jane Austen. So its answer is Jane Austen. Now students, let us discuss the second question. When was she born? So we have already discussed in the story that she was born on 16th of December 1775 in Steventon, Hampshire, England. Now students, let us discuss the question number 3. When was she died? So we have already discussed its answer in the starting of the this lesson, that she was died on 18th of July 1870. Now let us discuss the question number 4. The present story is taken from the novel. As you know students, we have discussed that this beautiful story An Excellent Father is taken from the beautiful novel Pride and Prejudice. Now students, let us discuss the question number 5, that is name the characters of the story. So there are many characters in the story, like Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Bennett, her 3 daughters Elizabeth, Kitty and Lizzie. Along with this there is Mr. Bingley and Mrs. Long was also there in the story. Students, let us discuss the question number 6. As far as question number 6 is concerned, who has taken the Netherfield Park? So dear students, we have studied in this story that Netherfield Park is a very big house which has been taken by Mr. Bingley, and this is also one of the turning point in the story, as the whole story revolves around this Netherfield Park and make the story possible. Okay, fine. Now students, let us discuss the question number 7. The question number 7 is, what is the meaning of the following words? These words we have already discussed, and now you have to tell the meaning of these words and also make sentence on this word. The first word is tiresome, which means boring or irritating, and another word which we have discussed in the story is persuade, which means to motivate, and the third word is surpass, which means greater. With this we have completed this beautiful story and a beautiful journey. Now students, it's time for home assignment. You just write down the main theme of the story, write down the character of Mr. Bennett at your home, and one thing which I am personally ask you to think in your mind, what is the thinking behind Mrs. Bennett? What do you think Mrs. Bennett was right in pressurizing her husband to make an acquaintance with Mr. Bingley? Or you think she consider her daughter's burden on her? What kind of thinking is in her mind, whether she was worried about her daughters or she considered her daughters as a burden on her? Have completed this beautiful topic, and hope you have understood this topic. Now let's revise this topic. Just open your textbook and read it once again. You will definitely enjoy it. So with this, I would like to thanks to all of you.